Okay, and welcome to this tutorial on SilverEfX Pro, in which I will show you how I turn this image into something better looking like this one. I will be using Lightroom as the host application for SilverEfX Pro, but you can do pretty much the same thing using Apple Aperture or Photoshop Elements or Photoshop. It's not in those applications that the magic will happen, it's in SilverEfX Pro itself. But there's one thing that, regardless of which application you use as a host application, you should be aware of, and that is that you should optimize the image before handing it over to the plugin. Take for example this image here, where I clearly missed my exposure, or should I say I exposed for the sky and not for the foreground. I think I was actually on spot metering and forgot about that I had set my camera to spot metering half an hour before that. Anyway, the exposure is not great, but I see that the histogram has a lot of potential to be improved in SilverEfX Pro, because I have very little clipping. I appear to have some black clipping, and that's my point. If I would send this image over to SilverEfX Pro like this, then everything that is blue on this preview here would be completely black, and I would have no way of restoring detail in there. But as I'm working on a raw file still, I can just put the black slider to 0, and you see now I don't have any crushed blacks at all anymore. Another thing that I will do is I will increase my dynamic range as much as possible on a raw level by increasing my exposure. This will improve my foreground detail, but of course it will now almost completely eliminate any sky detail. Yet I know there is sky detail. I see that from the RGB readouts on the histogram, and I also know it from before that if I see it here that there is not a peak towards right. So I have detail. The only problem will be to get that detail out of the image and maintain the foreground detail. Now, one way that I could do this would be in Photoshop to use some complex masking techniques, or I could try and use the adjustment brush in Lightroom, but I know from experience that I have a very hard time making this a believable retouch, because I need this has to be about 2 stops darker than it is right now, and it's very hard to make a believable adjustment brush adaptation with only those tools available to me. So I would just let SilverEfX Pro do the work, and I will hand the image over to the SilverEfX Pro plugin. And really important is that you always choose, especially when working with SilverEfX Pro, a bit depth of 16 bits per component and a nice and a big enough color space like Adobe RGB or ProPhoto RGB. Okay, again, the same thing would happen if you would use Aperture or Camera Raw and Photoshop. I'm just doing some preparatory work, allowing SilverEfX Pro to have a good histogram to work with. Now, normally you see that this is the base conversion, and it's not all that great, but I will show you in a couple of minutes time that we can do some really drastic and good changes to this image. I will usually start off with a preset that gets me in the ballpark, and in this case I will use the full dynamic harsh preset, because what I'm trying to do is increase the dynamic range of my image, and this gets me already partly there. You see I have a nice foreground, and I'm starting to get a little bit of detail in the sky. It's hardly visible, but still it's starting to improve. Now what I will do, I know that changing the brightness doesn't help, because that will affect the overall image, so also the foreground. But what I can do, and that's a new slider in SilverEfX Pro, it's called the dynamic brightness slider, and this intelligently breaks up my image in different parts, and when I lower the brightness, it will lower the brightest parts more than the not so bright parts, and this is exactly what I need. So have a look yourself. If I change the brightness, I get detail, but at the cost of reduced brightness in the foreground, something I don't want. If I lower the dynamic brightness, then I get sky detail, but the foreground becomes nowhere near as dark as it did with the actual brightness. So this is a very good point to start with, and now if I want, I can even improve the sky contrast a little bit more by adding a control point. And for those of you new to control points, you just put a point on a pixel that is representative for the area you want to change, and then you drag out a radius slider, making sure that the circle you get encompasses the whole region, in this case the sky you want to work on. And then you can, after having done that, the software will automatically, based on a proprietary algorithm, make a mask of what it is that you are trying to change. And it does a very good job at guessing that, and it's really amazing. So then you have 7 parameters that you can work on, and in this case I will just lower the brightness slightly and maybe increase the structure a little bit. And you see I'm getting a nice dramatic sky that I didn't even dare to think was there. Now I need some touch up. For example, I need to slightly brighten this little structure here, and also increase its structure as well to give it some more impact. I will also put another control point on the cloth here to make it stand out a little bit more. I'm actually dodging and burning for those of you who are used to traditional darkroom techniques, but I'm doing so in very precise and intuitive way using these control points. One of the areas that got darkened too much by the dynamic brightness slider is the left arm of the caretaker. So I will take care of that, pardon my pun, by adding a control point to it, and again just making sure I encompass everything, and then upping the brightness on that hand. And you see it makes a terribly good job of just selecting the hand. Another area that needs some work is the dove, the feather here of the dove. I will brighten that because I want to direct my viewers' eyes, your eyes, to that feather, to the wing of that dove. And I will also increase the structure, and you see this now gets a lot more of the viewer's attention. I will also slightly brighten the head of the dove and add some structure there as well. And then finally maybe I will brighten the tunic of the caretaker slightly more, and increase the fine structure, the fine details of the texture of the textile. So that's about it. The only thing that I will do now is add some toning. I'm normally not a big fan of toning, but this image is the red mask in Delhi is such a warm place that I really think it should have some toning to it, some warm toning. And then I will also add a slight vignette. And one of the cool things is that with the vignettes in SilverEfX Pro, that you can actually change the center. So for example, if I would want to relocate the center to the person, it's especially useful for images with off center subjects. And finally, what I will do is I will add an image border to this image, making it look a little bit more traditional. So there you have it. This is the before black and white conversion, standard black and white conversion, and this is what we wound up with after a couple of minutes in SilverEfX Pro. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope to see you again on another one.